this device
Yeah.
because I lost my voice.
Oh.
Can you hear me? Really? Okay. It will be bad if I do that without taking off the microphone. Today we can talk about something very powerful in relationship, and that is disagreement. Disagreements happen in relationships. Would you agree?
No.
So the question is, how do we respond to that? And I'd like to begin by reiterating a theme for this entire series on relationships. Something I've discussed in a number of different ways, and it's worth repeating. So I'll say it in yet another way. It's very important for us to remember that whoever we are in relationship with, it's very important for us to remember that they are human. Of course, it might be a dog or something, and the point I'm making that they're human applies to dogs just as much as it does to human beings. So understand what I mean when I say human. It's important for us to remember that whoever we're in a relationship with is human. The other thing it's important for us to remember about whoever we're in a relationship with is that they are not human. They're acting like it, which we appreciate, but actually they're not. A woman named Chisan, who's a nun, who I had the opportunity to train with for quite a while, was talking about romantic relationships, and I look forward to that talk if I ever have a chance to give it. On romantic relationships, she was discussing them and said that, the most difficult thing about romantic relationships, the thing that dooms most of them to failure, is that, and failure in this case doesn't mean divorce or something. There are worse consequences than divorce. So failure to her means the problem with most romantic relationships, they don't serve the purpose that they're meant to serve. They don't help the people in the relationship to serve their own purpose. So she said the reason most of them are doomed to failure is that in romantic relationships, it's very hard to remember that your partner is not human. It's very easy to fall into the belief that they are. And to just believe that, and just keep on believing that they're human. Because of that, they aren't invited to escape from that form, and they stagnate, and then suffering is the consequence of it. So it's very important for us to remember that whoever we're in a relationship with is not human. But to reiterate, it's important for us to remember that whoever we're in a relationship with is human. And this is relevant to me because I'm someone who a lot of people see as not being human. And there are real consequences to that belief. Many of the residents, for example, have trouble seeing me as human, and so they just forget to do things that human beings need, like feed me. It's sort of counterintuitive that I would need lunch. And so that's a problem. It puts me in a certain amount of physical danger. But there are other people in my life who deeply believe that I'm human. And that puts me in a great deal of spiritual danger. If you have to choose for yourself, choose the person who doesn't think that you're human, because they'll learn. The other way is much harder. If you believe the other way, it's harder to get over that. Not so easy. So play it safe. It's a big reason to have a community, so that we can practice seeing each other as being that which transcends the human. And if we practice it in relationship, then the words that I'm saying right now, we'll see they're not just words. I'm actually talking about something. It may seem as if I'm just making clever wordplay. I know what you mean. I've myself been to talks like this, and for years it seemed to me like, why don't you just say what you mean? Why do you have to make so many clever statements? Frustrating. But I'll tell you why. There are two reasons that we make clever statements. One is it's fun, and the other is that there's no way to say it. That's why. So you just say it in a memorable way, and people consider those words. You mostly are concerned whether people remember the words, not really whether they get the meaning, because the meaning won't be found in the words anyway. But if you keep on mulling over the words and chewing on them, then eventually, when you're looking at a sunset or when you're falling asleep, you'll realize what the words meant. And then you yourself, as I have done, again and again, once I realized what a teacher meant when they said that, I said, oh, this is what they meant. Now that I know it, I will say it clearly. You see how successful I am. Not very successful. So on the one hand, we have to remember that people are human. On the other hand, we have to remember that they're not. Ultimately, we actually see that both of those views are just views. Neither one actually is accurate. It's not accurate to say that a person is human. It's not accurate to say that they're not. Both are just views. And since we're talking about disagreements, it's important to be clear that what, as far as I'm concerned, we're really talking about are views. Views, 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 views. I am close with a very successful manager he's been very successful in managing people in the corporate sector. Very successful means very successful. He has done very impressive things with his skills in creating organizations and managing people and making them productive. And he's made a lot of money doing it. And he's putting that money to very good use right now. And I've had a chance to talk to him about what that means. And he says that the basis of a successful organization is successful relationships. And the basis of successful relationships is trustworthy commitments. That people can trust each other. That's the basis. And so his whole art is how do you make sure that people can make trustworthy agreements. And he says, why is it that it's so hard for us? And the reason is that we each come into a relationship, we each come into a circumstance with a certain set of assumptions. And when people disagree, it's rare that they're actually disagreeing about what they think they're disagreeing about. As I like to say, the issue is almost never the issue, but I've heard some people take it one step further and say, actually, the issue is never the issue. Yes. Courageous people might say such a thing. The issue is never the issue. What is the issue as far as he's concerned? The issue is the assumptions that we've carried into the circumstance, or what I call views. Now, let's just go on a quick detour. Tonight I have a lot to say, so we gotta move this thing on. So we're gonna do a quick. If you want more, you can ask, and believe me, I'll give it to you. But quick overview of Buddhism, because it's important. So here's your quick overview of Buddhism. Buddhism says that there's such a thing as suffering. It's not inherent. On the contrary, it's caused. Therefore, since it's caused, it can be resolved. And then this is how you resolve it. Okay? That's most of Buddhism right there. But now there's the last part. The last part is how do you resolve it? And the answer has 8 parts. There are 8 parts of the answer. I'm not going to go over all those parts right now. I'm just going to go over the first few. The first one is called right view. Right view. Now, your views determine something. This is a quick overview. So if you know about Buddhism and you disagree with what I'm saying, I understand. So do I, but I just have to do it quick. This is really quick and dirty. So if you want more, I got it. But for today, it's quick. So right view determines, well, I'll give you the Sanskrit just in case you want to look it up. The first one is samyak drishti. This drishti, samyak is a beautiful word. It means right or complete or true. Drishti means view. The way you see things, the way you look at things. And that determines something called samyak sankalpa. Now, sankalpa is a hard word to translate, but it means something like dream or aspiration or thought. The way you think about things is the way you consider things, the way you contemplate things, the way you interpret things, the way you imagine how things should be is based on your view. So more or less, if we want to simplify it down so that it fits, that we try to find a mapping within our culture. In our culture, ever since Hume, we've been very interested in this difference between is and ought. Now, it actually precedes that, but that was, he made it very famous. So this difference between is and ought. What is and what ought to be. What we often don't notice is that what we think ought to be is determined primarily by what we think is. What is a very important determinant of what ought to be. So your view on the way things are determines what you think should be done, what you think we should do. Now after that, it moves into other aspects, such as how you speak, how you live, the efforts you make, etc., etc. But for now, just these first 2, view and thought or aspiration. Our views are very powerful. The views that we take are very powerful. They are the primary determinants of how we live. And views that are not questioned, that aren't brought out in the open as views, have even more power. Secrets have power, I like to say. And when we continually look at things through a certain lens, to the point that we can't see the lens anymore, we don't know we're looking through the lens anymore, that lens has enormous consequences in terms of everything we do, and in particular in terms of our relationships. So when we're disagreeing with someone, it's important to remember that we're not disagreeing with them. Our views are disagreeing with each other. Our assumptions are disagreeing with each other. views disagree with each other. It's important to know that. I don't understand any way that it could be that two people could disagree with each other. I've actually never seen it happen. But views disagree with each other. And if we ascribe to a certain view, then we will disagree with people. It's definitely true. If you hold on to a certain view, there will be people who hold on to a different view. That's just how it is. And when you interact with them, your words, actions will be in conflict. So, two people come together and look at each other and have a fight or something, disagree about something. And there's the belief, I disagree with you, you're wrong. They're not wrong. It's possible that their view is wrong. That is very possible. There's a corollary to that, though. Possible that your view is wrong. And if we want to look at it from the traditional Buddhist perspective, these views that we hold on to are if we're holding on to them, if we're cherishing them, are the basis of all of the conflict in the world. If there's something in our minds, a way of looking at things that we grab onto and hold onto and think this is right and all else is wrong, that brings forth all the various forms of conflict in the world. And so the way that I see it, I think it's a useful way to see it, it's as if views are competing with each other for survival. It's one way to look at it. It's as if, I think it's a metaphor. I think it's a useful metaphor. It's as if views are competing with each other for survival. Kind of like, this is a metaphor, just so you all know. This is a metaphor. There may be those wise people here who can understand the meaning through a metaphor. But metaphors have a limited meaning. So here's some limited meaning for you. It's as if, in the same way that our genes compete with each other, different people's genes are competing, people, in the larger sense, meaning living things, are competing with each other for resources and use, it's all a metaphor, these protein structures, our bodies, to gather those resources. It's as if our views, our assumptions, our ways of looking at things are using us and using us as tools. And then we are knocked up against each other as the views are trying to win, beat each other out for the resource. So what's the resource? We have a sense of what genes use for resources. There's a sense of it. They eat food or something, in a way. You have a sense of it. Let's not get into the details. That's just the wilderness of views right there. But you have a sense of it. What do our assumptions, what do our views feed off of? This is a very important question. What?
Mind.
Our minds, here's our awareness. Our awareness is what they feed off of. This is a very impressive answer. So, by giving them attention, by continually providing them with attention, they live, they feed, they continue. Views that receive no attention are gone. They need attention. Without attention, they're gone. They can't survive. Same way that we couldn't survive if we didn't get lunch, for example. So how is it then that these views keep our minds as a resource? It's an even harder question. Does anyone know? It's a really hard question. Clinging. the act of clinging. Through clinging, there's a sense of clinging to the views. Because of that clinging, the views can use our minds as fuel, like a fire uses, like a fire clings to the wood that it's burning on. So, if we're talking to someone, we're disagreeing. The conflict arises not because different views have come into contact with each other. That actually isn't the fundamental issue. Views are just views. Our minds just think stuff up all the time. That's what they do. We just think up ideas. We look at things in different ways. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the playfulness of consciousness. It's just how it goes. The issue is when clinging is introduced, so we're clinging to a view, then suddenly we cherish it. Then suddenly conflict arises. Because if someone comes to us and says something else, well, that's a real problem. That's a problem now. Now there's a competition. How do you know? How would you be able to know that that's happening? That the view is subject to clinging? How would we know that? Well, it's hard to know it, but I give you a general rule of thumb. If a view is being questioned to the point that that is actually in danger, most views have assumptions, ways of looking at things, perspectives, have a very effective response strategy, defense mechanism, and that is emotional overwhelm. They trigger your emotions to the point that your ability to see clearly is debilitating. So you're talking to someone and they say something that's against your viewpoints. At first, you can just talk, right? You just say, hey, this is what I think. They say, oh, interesting. This is what I think. You say, oh, interesting. This is what I think. They say, how interesting. This is what I think. And then they say something that suddenly, you'll probably notice this, it often happens suddenly. Suddenly, you're angry, fearful, sad. But wait, there are other dangerous emotions too, aren't there? Happy, joyful, comfortable. Suddenly you feel these big emotions, either because you agree or disagree. And you can't hear them anymore. You can't hear what they're saying anymore. And the challenge either becomes, how can I preserve this person? Or how can I change this person? That suddenly becomes the interest, not to listen, not to hear, but to change, to manipulate, or to preserve and stagnate. Depending again on if we agree or disagree. So we're interacting with someone. And at first it's possible to just say, I think this and you think that, and maybe it's a different view. You can say, okay, neat. Well, let's get lunch. Maybe. But then suddenly it shifts. It shifts to, oh, if you think that, then I have to do something about it. You have to change it, and the time you have to change is actually now. We can't wait for you to process this information. That's too long. You have to change now, and if you don't, well then, that's the end of the relationship, isn't it? Or it's so good you believe that. You keep on believing that, and as long as you keep believing that, we'll be friends. Our friendship is dependent upon you not growing. Either of these things happen, and honestly, either way the relationship ends because they're not stopping changing. And they're not going to change the way we want them to. So either way, the relationship ended. And that point of giving up on the relationship is a point that's actually relatively identifiable. You can identify it when it happens. It's actually surprisingly easy delineate. There's a sense of emotional overwhelm, and then there's a sense of, oh, that's it. There can't be any more communication. And so we can identify, we can notice when that happens. We can notice that there's a kind of a tension, a conflict that's right within us. So, what do we do about that? What do we actually do about it? What's the solution? First of all, it's very important for us to remember that this person who we're talking to, and the person who's talking to them, meaning us, that person can be swayed, imprisoned, fettered by views. That's true. That can happen. And yet, there's something that isn't. In other words, we're talking to a human being, but we have to remember that they're not human. There's something there that isn't fettered by those views. And there's something in us that isn't fettered by those views. There is something that is free from that. And it's important to remember this as a view. Because while it's true that that when we, let me say this, if we're in the prison of views, then we need a pathway out of that prison. We need a pathway out of the prison. But you're in prison. And remember, if you're in this room and you want to get out of it, the entire pathway, I say this all the time, but I'll say it again, the entire pathway out of the room is in the room. If I want to walk from here to there, I want to get out of the room. The whole pathway is in the room. In the same way, if you want to get out of the prison of views, you use views to do it. And furthermore, there is such a thing as reality. In our modern day, postmodern world, we like to think that there isn't, that there's no such thing as truth. Everything's just interpretations. But there actually is reality. There is such a thing as right view. Right view is a thing. It exists. And we can realize it. And that right view has two aspects. The right view in prison and the right view out of the prison of views. It's our job to realize that. And one of the views that's helpful is to remember, is to look at each other, knowing all the time that this person who seems to be disagreeing with me, here they are, this human being standing before me, they disagree with me because they're stupid, they're wrong, they're bad, dangerous. Why are they doing that? Well, what if they're not a human being and they're pretending to be a human being just to point out how fixated we are on this view? Because if I wasn't fixated on the view, we couldn't be disagreeing. We're disagreeing because I'm fixated and they're fixated. But what if they're not really fixated and they're just pretending to be fixated? So I'll notice that I'm fixated. That would be really nice of them. I mean, this is a really annoying argument. I don't want to be in this. I bet they don't want to be in this, but they're willing to be in this just so that I can get through my fixation on this view. That's very kind of them. I mean, they could be just dwelling off in heaven as far as I know, but they've come all the way to me. Taking all this time, they developed this long-term relationship just so that they could point out to me how fixated I am on this irrelevant view that actually doesn't matter. And we again and again can see how it is that these views don't matter, because I was just talking to someone recently, and in her community, there's a huge disagreement about stuff that feels so important that, I mean, it's worth destroying relationships over this because it's so important. It's worth maybe tearing the organization apart because it's so important. We've been through this in our organization. People have different views, and people are willing to destroy the organization It's worth it. Let's destroy the community because our views are right. Let me just take this out to a bigger level, even though I don't have much time. I got a lot to say today. But just a few decades ago, and it's actually still true now. In a certain way, it's still true now. But for a long time, it was the official policy of the two most powerful countries in world history. The official policy was, we are willing to eliminate life as we know it. We're willing to engage in mutually assured destruction because we have different views on the way to make stuff. Means of economic production. We disagree about how you should set up a factory, and that disagreement is so important that we're willing to destroy life as we know it. This is the level of slavery that human beings engage in to views. The same way we know in our organization, we've had this happen. Different people disagree about things that feel so important that it's worth destroying everyone's lives over them. So anyway, I was talking to this woman whose community's been going through that. And it's going to be rough and people are going to suffer, but it's worth it because I'm right and you're wrong. And then, out of nowhere, an absolute tragedy took place. A real tragedy. So they say there is reality. A real tragedy took place. And suddenly, it's possible to see that none of that mattered. And it isn't just that it doesn't matter now, it's that it never mattered. There was no point in the process when it was worth going through that level of conflict over this kind of disagreement. It's essential for us to remember that these conflicts that we have themselves aren't the point. The reason we're going through it is to root out the attachments that we have to the views that therefore imprison us. Because those views prevent us from realizing our true wisdom. And so we can be grateful when people point that out to us. When people make it possible for us to see the fixation, the slavery, the entanglement, the fetters of views. So that's this is the beginning of it. Be able to see through that.
Or can you move your shawl a little bit so it doesn't come?
Oh yeah, thank you. So the other point, which we'll be working on this evening, is the ability to discard all views. And a great deal of meditation is simply about discarding all views, learning how to set aside every view. Because we don't know which ones are the ones that are causing the problems. We often deeply believe that we know. But actually, in my experience, when disagreements happen, it's because two different views are in conflict. And each of those views needs the other one. Put another way, if you disagree with someone and you want to change their opinion, don't disagree with them. Because the fact that they can hold on to that view is fed by the disagreement. Opposite views, opposing views need each other. They can't survive without each other. And that's actually demonstrated in a very practical way, which you might not like because it's kind of self-serving and tricky. But if you really want to change a person's opinion, people study this stuff. We know how it's done. It's that you be friends with them and just let them know how you see things. That's it. Don't disagree with them. The moment the disagreement starts, you're enabling, you're feeding their viewpoint. Because opposing views need each other to survive. If there's no views depend on conflict. If there isn't conflict, views don't have the arena, the ecosystem, you could say, that they need in order to survive. So we come to the point when we are able to be friends with people. We can be very open about how we see things, but not get engaged in these disagreements, because in a strange way that feels very confusing to us, I know I'm over time, but in a strange way that seems very confusing to us, exactly the thing that we're doing to solve the problem is creating it. Precisely the thing we're doing to solve the problem is precisely the thing that's creating the problem. And I don't want to be, I'm going to finish this way. But a little while ago, and still really today, in fact, it's just not official policy, but a little while ago, we were willing to destroy the world over this disagreement about capitalism and communism. And I just want to be clear, I'm taking the current political situation very seriously. It's very serious to me. I suppose it's serious to many of you. And it's hard to acknowledge, but neither side could exist without the other. So whichever side we're attached to, we're creating a problem. How about that? It's terrifying, isn't it? We're in very dangerous waters right now. It's not a joke. It's terrifying. It's very serious. So what can we do about it? And our typical response is grab onto a certain viewpoint. Be in conflict with those who disagree. What we're offering is a different solution. We've come here tonight to find a different way. Good news, it's possible. And good news, it works. It actually does work. Be friends with people you disagree with and don't argue with them. It works. We know it works. Studies show it works. Better. So there's no logical reason that we wouldn't do that. There's only one reason we wouldn't do that. That is that the views have imprisoned us, that they're feeding off of our lives. We're being used. We're being used by them. We're being parasitized. So that we no longer have the freedom to behave in wise and loving ways. And we just serve certain perspectives no matter what. In order to deal with the significance of that problem, the significance of interpersonal conflict, the significance of polarizing ourselves so that the views survive, even though the people may not. In order to deal with that, in order to actually deal with it, we meditate. That's what meditation is for the end of conflict. That's what it's for. That's why we're here. And it's hard, because we sit down and we have a lot of views on things. And everyone, we learn how to discard. Why? Because if we do that, if we cherish nothing in our minds, then there's no place for conflict to arise. And then finally, as I wrote in an email, disagreement is a sacred practice. Disagreement itself becomes sacred. Not conflict, but sacred. So, I know it was a long talk this evening, but I had a lot to say. Actually, I had more to say. I cut it down. So it's time for us to move into the process that allows us to resolve these conflicts. always begin the session with your eyes open and do something that I know might be a little frightening. It's okay if you're frightened. It might be emotionally overwhelming. Well, work with it. But take a look around and gaze on each other with kindly eyes. Just practice that. Don't be too interested in what other people are thinking. We don't know. Doesn't actually make any difference. Just say hi and practice internally seeing each other with kindly eyes. Probably the people aren't really looking at you anyway, they're just being self-conscious, so don't worry about how people are seeing you right now. Worry about how you're seeing them.
It's a good time to be nearsighted, it's what you know.
Yeah, you can, that's a good point. You can defocus your eyes. The point isn't really to make clear eye contact. The point is to observe how it is in your own heart that kindliness, friendliness arises as you see others. That's all. It's very simple. You're actually trying to get in touch with something in your body, not an outside world. It doesn't really matter what people are thinking or what you're thinking about them. How are you feeling? That's all. And once you feel like you're in touch with that, once you have come into contact with the kindness inside of your own body, then you can return to a posture that is facing forward. You can close your eyes if you like, straighten your back, stabilize your balance, and relax your entire body. Bring your attention now to body sensations. Body sensations. And now narrow your focus even further to physical body sensations. Physical body sensations means body sensations that are not emotional in nature. So if you find that emotions are arising, you're feeling emotion, that's fine that they're arising, but don't pay attention to them. Or if you do pay attention to them, attempt to bring your attention back to a physical sensation that's not emotional. The anchor point that many people tend to use is their breath. Sensation of the breath as it moves through your nostrils, throat, chest, abdomen. You can attend to those sensations if you like, but any physical, meaning non-emotional body sensations, all are part of this focus space. And pay attention to those. as long as you're attending to those physical body sensations, at that time, we'll say that you are not paying attention to views. For the purposes of this exercise, we'll refer to that as a time when we're not attending to views. You may notice, however, that at times you do get caught up in views. If that happens, then the practice is to return to the physical body sensation. That's the practice. Now you may think, but I can't. If so, then that's a view. So bring your attention back to the physical body sensations. And you might think, well, yeah, but I can't. Aha. Good news. Found another view. Return to the physical type body sensations. You might think, why does he keep saying that? I can't. Excellent. You found another view. Now return to the physical type body sensations. It's the act of returning that matters, not the state of being stuck in physical type body sensations. Not about fixating there. If another view arises, fine. But you can attend to your breath for a moment. You can. And I know that that's also a view. Why we use views to escape from views. And some views are true. There is such a thing as right view. So bring your attention back. And then, if your attention is drawn away, return. Once again, instructions are attend to physical body sensations. For example, your breathing. If you're distracted, bring your attention back. If you're distracted, it's likely that you're distracted by views. Take advantage of the opportunity to break your attachment to those views. How? Simple. Bring your attention back to body sensations. Remember, the ultimate purpose of the exercise is not to attend to body sensations. That's the method. The goal is to abandon your views. And to do that for even one moment has enormous value. In a moment, I'll ring the bell, and we'll have the opportunity to continue this practice while moving. If you'd like, you should feel free to stand up. And move around the space. You can go outside also if you'd like, or use the restroom, get some water, but try to be back here within just a few minutes, 3 minutes or so. And as you move around, continue to attend to body sensations. Continue to remain mindful of physical body sensations. During this time, there's no need to interact with each other. It will probably be very difficult to interact with anyone without engaging in views. So just for now, stay with your body, and we'll continue with the next portion of the meditation in just a few minutes. Very good. Now, continue with that exercise. Continue with that simple exercise. Attend to physical body sensations. If you get distracted, come back to mindfulness of body sensations. And know that as you do that, especially if you're abandoning a thought about something, a view on things, but in fact, in all likelihood, if you're doing that in any case, you are achieving the purpose of the exercise at that moment, which is to abandon views. But as you do this, add on one more component. That is, when you return to those body sensations and abandon views, pay attention to the kind of happiness, the kind of peace, the kind of pleasure that you experience at that time. And if you get involved in views, in your thoughts about things, your perspectives on things, your ways of interpreting things. For example, I'm meditating, I'm not meditating, I'm doing a good job, I'm doing a bad job, this is working, this isn't working. I'm right, they're right, I'm wrong, they're wrong. If you get involved in any of that, at that moment, examine the kind of happiness, the kind of pleasure, the kind of peace that you experience at that time. You're comparing the two kinds of happiness. The kind of happiness that comes from abandoning views, and the kind of happiness that comes from becoming attached to views, becoming entangled in views, becoming fettered by views. Both have a kind of pleasure associated with them. Examine them, explore them, investigate them. Once again, attend to body sensations. If you're distracted by anything at all, attend to anything else, bring your attention back. It's common that our attachment to views will motivate us to be caught up in any number of things. Isn't that this view has to be a carefully constructed thesis? Any kind of distraction and certainly any kind of thought. Bring your attention back to your body, and at that moment know that you're abandoning views in all likelihood. The moment you return to your body, notice the kind of pleasure, the kind of peace that comes with that. And if you become distracted, again, first thing to do, even before you come back, is notice the kind of pleasure that's associated with becoming attached to that view, to that distraction, to that thought. Of course, you may be distracted by something that's not a thought, sound in the room or something, and then simply return to body sensations. But when you return, notice again the kind of pleasure that comes with that. Is there time for questions or comments? Any sort of conversation? Is it one or not? Yes? Tony?
I like your voice, you get that FM radio voice, nice and low and soothing. I like that meditation. I really did feel like letting go of my ideas. I was able to just kind of let them go on the out breath. And I was following my breath mostly, and I was out breathing more than I was in breathing. So I was letting out, I guess, more than I was taking in. But I did definitely feel like a joy. Yeah. Happy joy. It was a kind of a light thing for a while. And then I kind of sabotaged it later on. I think in the second half, I started to get like fearful. Like whoa kind of thing. Fearful of that, of the process. Fear encroached into the process. I don't know where it came from, it just did. And so I just kind of went with it and tried to, let go of the fear, and I kind of did, but it was still kind of in the background. But it was really, I liked it.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. So, in terms of the abandoning of views, sounds like you had two different emotional reactions. One was joy, and the other was fear. First one was joy. Second one was fear. Was the joy gone when the fear arose?
Yeah, it seemed like the fear was crashed in and kind of wrecked it, the party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's likely that what I described was happening? That I was saying that if a view is threatened, there's a view that we may actually let go of. I was talking about if we're in conversation with someone, we might find that a view is being questioned that we hold on to, and we might discover that it's not valid. A typical response strategy of that view is to bring forth emotional overwhelm, anger, fear, or other emotions. But of course that can happen in the meditation process as well. As you meditate, you may also be letting go of a certain view, and it may bring forth a certain emotional reaction in response? Do you think that was happening, or was something else happening?
Apparently, a thought crept in enough to decide that what I was doing was threatening or something, that kind of thing. Right? It was threatening.
So there was a thought.
It must have been.
Well, must have been.
I don't remember it. I was pretty focused on the breath and pretty focused on letting go, and it kind of just.
So maybe there was no thought, right?
Maybe not. I don't remember one.
We don't have direct evidence that there was a thought.
No.
Okay, good. Well, of course we should remain open to the possibility, but at the same time we shouldn't merely assume that there was a thought. Sorry. Is that loud? Not so loud. Oh, okay. So then, for you, it may have happened that without a thought, the fear was triggered.
That's what it felt like, actually. Yeah.
Good. So, when I say that the view triggers it, I don't necessarily mean that it does it with a thought. It's possible that it does it right away, directly. Views are arguably deeper than the sorts of things that we would typically call thoughts. Of course, certain thoughts can be aspects of views, but typically they're lower level than that. It doesn't have to be a thought. I want to give an example right now, and I'm having trouble deciding which one, because there's so many. Put it this way. Shinzen, I've mentioned this before, Shinzen, when he was talking to me about teaching. So when you're teaching, you have to remember that 90% of the time, people who hear you teach will either hear what they were hoping you would say or what they were afraid you would say. It's very unusual that they'll hear what you're saying. Whichever they're coming in with a certain set of things they want you to say and don't want you to say. And whichever, you'll say something. And whatever one of the things is closest, and they have a certain set of things, you'll say this thing. That thing is similar to one of those things. Maybe it's something they like, maybe it's something they don't. But if it's similar enough, then they'll assume that you're saying that. And then they'll even think that you're a great teacher or a terrible teacher. I would say that probably doesn't happen with a thought. There is no conscious thought at that moment. There's just a sense of no, you shouldn't say that. Or yes, finally somebody's saying that. Same way I had an agreement with someone and they decided not to uphold the agreement because they realized we in our culture, this person is an adherent to the mainstream religious culture, doctrine, which I think you need to repeatedly state for us is called liberal humanism. Now, liberal humanism upholds something as the highest authority in the world, and that is human feelings, how we feel about things. So follow your heart. Yes. That's what we hold up as the highest authority. And that you should follow your own heart. That's what liberal means. It means individualistic. And humanism means that the human experience is the purpose of the universe. Human beings are the center and the measure of the universe. So anyway, this individual is an adherent of that religious, with a mainstream religious view, which is so mainstream that most people don't even think it's a religion. You think that secular humanism is not a religion. It's called secular after all. But it has many faith perspectives, such as how you feel is the most important authority in the world. So anyway, this person had realized that our agreement didn't accord with their heart. They didn't want to do it. And so, didn't, right? Actually was quite, and remains quite offended that I would have expected them to do something that they felt was inappropriate at the time. I don't think that there was a thought there. That sense of fear, sense of discomfort, the sense of aversion to doing what we agreed to wasn't thought-based, I suppose. I think it was prior to that. In the same way that when I was concerned that from my perspective, in my view, they were doing something wrong that actually was unsafe for me. I had my emotional reactions also. I don't know if a thought preceded them. So it isn't so much that it has to be conscious. It's an immediate. It can be more immediate.
Emotional response very often.
Yeah. And yet, nonetheless, we get set with that. We get set in a certain position. So with that clarification, now I'm not telling you should think this, but do you think that what was happening was a certain way of looking at things, as you did exercise, that way of looking at things was being put in jeopardy, and therefore there was an emotional reaction?
I think that's likely.
Seems likely, but we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know,
We don't
but
know.
it's likely that that's what it was. It just like a emotional response to that. What I was doing was dangerous because I was evacuating myself,
Mhm.
right? I was releasing it all.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, at some point, wait a second.
And what's dangerous about that?
What is dangerous? Well, when I think about it, I like the idea, because I think that I agree with you that, we're all stuck in our perceptions and we get wrapped up in them and attached to them. And I like the exercise of abandoning them. I think it's a good exercise intellectually. But apparently somewhere deep inside, there's something trained in me that's attached enough that woke up.
So what's dangerous?
Hmm?
What's dangerous? What would be dangerous about evacuating yourself?
Well, I guess I would be losing
Yeah.
all those times, that I'm right in life, evidently it's been important to me to be right, I suppose. And I must have an attachment to that. A strong one.
Possible.
Even though I might not like to admit it.
Yeah, it's possible. The way you put it, it sounds like we're not entirely sure, right?
Mhm.
But something seems dangerous. Maybe it's that you're losing the opportunity to be right.
Mhm.
This is an interesting topic for me, so I'm wondering if anyone else has a sense of what might be dangerous about it. Yes?
No, not dangerous.
What? What might be dangerous about evacuating ourselves?
You have to start to give up part of your identity. If being right about these
Yes.
things is part of your identity, you're starting to give up that part of yourself. And then what's scary is where does it stop when you start to follow?
Beautiful.
Mhm.
So,
Beautiful. So these views, yes, these views constitute a very important part of what we think we are. what we feel we are, believe we are, our identities. And to lose our views is to lose ourselves. Is that what you're saying? That's what you're saying? Yeah.
Well, especially as we're pushed around these identity politics and all that, we're just pushed and pushed. These memes are hitting us with all the marketing know-how and magic that they've got. You know, the more we're exposed to it, the more it's infecting our minds.
Right. Our identities, as soon as our identities are at stake. Is that what it felt like to you, Tony?
I think the gentleman in the corner pretty much nailed it, yeah. Yeah, for me as well, yeah.
Exactly. So let me ask this question. What's dangerous about losing ourselves? Anyone can answer, of course you could. Tony, you don't have to, you've been talking a lot, which is nice of you. But other people also can. What would be dangerous about losing ourselves? Yes.
Well, what's dangerous is that you've accumulated, hopefully with a open mind, decades of relevant information of how you and the world work. And to discard that is like, discarding carefully written books that are based in as much reality as you can ingest. And discarding that, basically throwing out your life's work in a sense.
Right.
And
Excellent.
why?
Excellent. And
To
why?
what end? To what end?
To what end, yes. Well, you know to what end, right? I mean, it's a good point. That's what we think. But the answer is clear, right?
An answer is clear. I mean, one answer is clear, or may be clear that, like we've talked about here, the more open your mind is, well, no, it's not there.
Well, it could be wrong. I think the clarity is it could be wrong. That's why. You throw it out because it could be wrong.
What I just said could be wrong.
No, the things that you're throwing out, all these
Oh,
accumulated
yes.
ideas could be wrong.
Correct.
And that's why we throw them out. As far as we know, they're wrong. And so you discard them. I wrote a book, like you say, Your Life's Work. I wrote that. Computer crashed, lost all of it. I wrote it again, it was much better. It wouldn't have been that good if I hadn't lost it. At the moment of losing it, I was very disappointed. It was a terrible moment. It took me days to recover. And yet, I'm glad now that it happened, because it was better than, I even if I had the mental fortitude to tell myself, well, it's good, not great, so I'm gonna just set that aside and try again. We don't know what would have happened. I would have taken bits and pieces and it would have just been the same thing, but it was gone. And there's a great value in that. So it could be wrong, it might not be entirely accurate.
Or another analogy you're suggesting might be that it's a good exercise perhaps to clear out the decades or whatever's worth of learned opinions, perspectives, and start afresh every few years with the best information you can get hold of.
Right.
And where your head is at. Okay.
Exactly.
I think the danger is any of this collecting business. Views and spiritual trainings are no different than physical objects. The minute that we polish them and cherish them too much, then we're attached to those just as much as anything else. And what comes to mind is the koan study concept of liberate, even the antidote.
Could you slow down? Because I can't hear you.
Yes, I can.
Thanks. Can you say it again?
Yeah. There are a couple of books by Soryu that just come to mind. The first is Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, which literally deals with the accumulation of all the different stuff that we learned and found that was meaningful at the time. And if the only time is now, though, what was meaningful then may not hold anymore. And the situation may have changed as well. So what right do we really have to cling on to those things? Except to evaluate not every few years, really. When you said that, I heard evaluate every morning when you wake up with a beginner's mind. So the particular phrase out of the other Disagreement book is liberate even the antidote. So even if we have a meditation practice that rocks your world, you gotta let that one go too, because you can't be holding on to that.
That brings up some questions. The one I don't run against the wall, right? And I don't pee in my pants in public. Right? So that, right?
Sure.
And I don't think you do that anymore. You, right? Yeah.
Maybe that's what I was worried about.
No, but I'm serious. So I mean, of course, these are obvious examples they gave, but somewhere, right? I have views that are important for my survival. I can eat this, I cannot eat that. And then I think about it a little more, oh, actually, maybe I shouldn't eat that. Right? And so, like how far you push yourself. And some things are obvious, but some things are kind of, but it's so easy, right, to say, oh, come on, I think about this. I don't have a political view. I'm about that, right? The moment I see it, I can absorb it, right? I'm great. And so, when I'm sitting here with letting go of the view of this room, the column there, they let go of it, and it comes back and comes back. And I'm at a loss there with it, Basically, I think I'm bringing up like my own blindness, right? Like how far am I able to realize there's a view I can abandon, and where something so real that I must be completely delusional if I let go of that, right? Like running against that thing there, right? Yeah. So I don't have an answer. It's not a good question, right?
What's the question? How
Yeah.
far do you go?
Well, yeah. Well, how can you tell? Or where is it worth paying attention to? What should I pay attention to in terms of letting go?
Free fall.
Tom?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I want to get that and run against the color there. So
Yeah.
So that was probably the most peace I've felt all week. So, thank you. And it's loosely connected with staying in sensation of the body, in that I really stayed rooted in felt sensation. Also noticing that disappearance.
Disappeared.
Just I couldn't feel my body anymore. It was gone. And so I started to get playful with that exploration of that of, okay, bring it back to sensation. It's gone, come back. And I can go out and go in and go out and go in and to start to feel, taste, sense the nuances of the spaces, and just my mind was not there unless I heard your voice, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, and then like, no, let that go. It's like I didn't want to talk at first because I want to keep this, so I really needed that. Thank you.
There's a very important question, which interesting. We were just exploring this on the past retreat. I asked the question, what's dangerous about it? And I appreciate the answers that were given. Appreciate that. Those, of course, are just a few. I think many other answers could also be given to that question. And don't think it wasn't just a rhetorical question. It wasn't saying there's nothing problematic here. And furthermore, I'm not saying you should abandon all views, because that would be hypocritical. Correct? Correct. It would be a view. Views are bad. Get rid of them. That's inherently hypocritical teaching, and I value the uprooting of hypocrisy. So, I want to be clear, I'm not saying you should get rid of all views. So there's certainly very good answers. And one of the answers that I heard was free fall. Why wouldn't you? Free fall.
Mm.
Okay, so why would you? And the answer that I'm hearing is free fall, right? You've lost your mind, you lost your body, lost yourself, and it's wonderful, it's peaceful. It's a wonderful experience. So it's possible to experience that as something terrifying, possible to experience that as something wonderful. It's possible to experience it both ways. And it's very, very important for us to know why the same thing would be experienced one way or the other. Would you want to add one thing? You can finish it off for us. We have 1 more minute and it's yours.
Yeah, I was swimming in
Yeah.
water,
Yeah.
in the river,
Yeah.
and then it was just like became one with the water and just felt really happy.
And so you experienced something similar. There was a wonderful experience of letting go. Not a terrifying experience of letting go. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's very important to reiterate it, clarify that. And you know, you might experience it one way today and another way tomorrow. And it's worth looking at why. What's the difference? Very, very important to look at this closely. So I appreciate that everyone has been willing to throw ourselves into this, make this exploration, and make it together as a community. Make it in relationship so that we can hear each other's views on this practice. It's very powerful. Very, very good. It's easy for us, especially for practicing alone, to think, well, I had a wonderful experience and that's it. I had a fearful experience and that's it. But it's actually bigger than that. And so together we can see that. And in that way, disagreements. Yes? We're talking about disagreements, right? Disagreeing about that, about our experience. That way disagreements become a sacred.